Hello and welcome to the second of 3 bite-sized webinars in which we will discuss how to create an adaptive systems planning capability. As I said in the introduction to the first webinar, how often do our plans and strategies get signed off at a point in time and then sit gathering dust on a shelf? Most regulatory cycles propagate the need for 5 to 10 year business plans, creating regulatory obligations and targets that need to be delivered come what may, and often regardless of a changing context. If the last few years have taught us anything, it is to expect the unexpected. Our plans need to be adaptable. My name is Stephen Herndlhofer. I've spent the best part of 30 years working across the nuclear and wastewater sectors. Most recently, I've been working in the fascinating area of decision science and complex systems modelling. In the third webinar, I will be joined by my colleague Craig, who is going to talk us through some very detailed case studies and demonstrate the benefits of this approach. So we structured the 3 sessions as follows. In the first session, we focused on the key drivers for building such a capability, and also what were the advances in technology that now make such capabilities possible. And we'll just do a little refresher of that in the moment. Today, we'll cover the key characteristics of such a capability and how our clients have gone about building that capability within their own organizations. And finally, as I said, Craig will cover in the third session some case studies and really bring this capability to life and focus on some of the benefits to your organization. But firstly, just a quick recap of what we covered in the first session. So we talked about VUCA, our dynamic context, which is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. We talked about the importance of systems thinking as an approach or methodology to manage within that VUCA environment. We outlined how by bringing together adaptive systems planning and systems thinking, one could create that adaptive systems planning capability. We then compared how a top-down whole system approach differed from more traditional bottom-up risk-based portfolio approaches. Bring this all to life, we then took a brief look at the work completed at Sydney Water, which blended these two approaches to deliver outstanding results. And finally, we concluded with some recent observations from UK water regulator Ofwat, who are very much focusing on these types of capabilities for the next price review, PR24. How would I sum it up? Well, what is the capability about? Organizations that possess this capability are able to course correct at pace. They understand where they're going, but their plans are not static. They're iterative. They move in a dynamic way as the context around them changes. And I think there's a very relevant quote there from William Arthur Ward. The pessimist complains about the wind. The optimist expects it to change. And the realist adjust the sails. And that is really what this is about. So where do we start? Well, if I were to say, give you one piece of advice, it would be to ensure that you have a clear objective. What business problems are you trying to solve? Which business processes are you trying to improve? What business risks are you trying to mitigate? What costs are you trying to reduce? What performance are you trying to enhance? Be clear on your scope, your context, your assumptions, and your timeframes. And we're just going to take a closer look at the timeframes and the application of solutions to those timeframes as a way of demonstrating how the capability can be applied to different challenges to deliver a broad range of benefits against those timeframes. So at a strategic level, the best opportunity exists to consider the fundamental purpose of the system and, crucially, how it needs to evolve over time in order to continue delivering that purpose in the most optimal way. As asset systems have evolved to satisfy the needs of customers, the environment, and regulators, how often do we take a step back and ask, how effective is the system? What waste now exists within the system? What is constraining it? Or where is the headroom that I could exploit? By taking a top-down approach, we're able to answer these questions and reveal opportunities to create client value, which are simply not visible if one assumes the current system configuration is static. For example, what innovations or new operating models are excluded or constrained by the current network configuration? So, unlike other modelling solutions, this approach can be applied to strategic, tactical, and operational problems. Although the value proposition does change as the time horizon decreases and the funnel of opportunities to change the nature or configuration of the system narrows, moving from effectiveness to efficiency and finally cost control. So let's take a couple of examples. At a strategic level, as part of the price review process, National Grid sought justification to replace Feeder 9, a gas transmission pipe linking the north and south banks of the Humber. Justification did not come as expected on safety grounds, but by considering the impact on the overall financial performance of the system and the consequential impact on customer bills. Following significant scrutiny by Ofgem, this top-down whole system approach secured £111 million of additional funding. At a tactical level, our systemic leakage solution, LIDS, has been used to re-evaluate Severn Trent's current leakage plan. They had thought that their plan would deliver their AMP7 leakage reduction targets. However, the portfolio approach that underpinned this conclusion did not consider operational solutions. Neither did it blend operational and capital investments, nor how individual benefits combined when applied to a dynamic system. Put simply, you just can't simply add up the benefits. A top-down assessment exposed significant benefit duplication, a blind spot which would have resulted in a failed leakage target in years 4 and 5. Our approach now informs their tactical leakage planning and has avoided significant reactive and recovery costs. Taking an operational example, our bioresource solutions are now well established within the sector. As an example, our 12-week production planning solution at Anglian Water has enabled their best ever energy production, their best ever asset utilisation, and is sustainably delivering £2 million of OPEX saving every year. A number of our clients are now connecting these operational solutions and tactical and strategic bioresource solutions underpinned by a common data platform as part of their PR24 planning processes. So what gets in the way? The next few slides will explore the key barriers and enablers that both prevent and enable this type of solution within an organisation. Firstly, we don't have the data. Surely, if you take a systems approach, you need even more data. We don't have enough, or we don't manage our data effectively at the moment. Why should we add to the problem? Quite often, the complete opposite is true. You will never have a complete data set, and organisations use the same data for decisions anyway. So you might say, what have they got to lose? Through rapid scenario analysis, data inaccuracy is assessed, and gaps in data can be filled through expert elicitation. And those assumptions, through rapid scenario analysis, can be quickly stress tested. These assumptions often pin your decisions anyway at the moment, but they're just not visible. Exposing them and testing them has significant advantage to the organisation. Data criticality isn't seldom completely understood at a systems level, and this is a way of really getting under the skin of data criticality at that level. This capability informs true data capability. And moreover, such projects often go on to inform and even form part of data improvement plans. Next, we don't have the skills or the resources. That is quite often the case to start with. However, many organisations employ analysts to configure and analyse complex scenarios, very often on a trial and error basis, exploring and seeking feasible solutions to problems. Very often, the optimal solution is beyond their reach. With a rapid scenario analysis capability, the auto-generation and population of scenario parameters allows a full range of scenarios to be considered, and analysts can then focus on the results and not time-consuming effort in the configuration of the scenarios to begin with. And this was certainly the case at National Grid, a case study that we will look at in a little while. In reality, the speed at which the solution can be configured means that the very limited client resources are required. And these are largely focused on data provision and solution validation. Through the initial projects, it's important to build advocacy and confidence amongst the user community, but this is often done by providing the analysts with tools that really allow them to exploit and develop their skills. The solution provides a simple and intuitive user interface and standard, easily configurable reports. This means that clients are not left with supplier dependency that requires support every time they want to run a handful of new scenarios. Deep mathematical or analytic skills are certainly not required to build this capability. We don't have the cash. Of course, a lot of organisations are feeling the pinch at the moment. Utilities and other asset-intensive companies are no different. But it is the years of simplification, years of planning and managing complex connected asset systems as disaggregated cohorts of assets, which have, to some extent, created the financial opportunity. Because typical investment systems and management structures break down the system and don't consider it as a whole, over the years, constraints have crept in and headroom has been created. Taking a step back and a systems approach creates the opportunity to relax those constraints, exploit the headroom, and in this way, create and expose hidden value in the system. These solutions deliver hard, sustainable savings, as well as cost avoidance and a range of softer benefits. And we have many examples where project payback has been less than 6 months. In building a business case for the creation of such a capability, we would therefore recommend that clients focus on value and not on cost. In a world where the red pen has ruled and held sway for so many years, with all the consequential risk that creates for our clients, it is difficult to see how companies can avoid not embracing such a sustainable approach in the future. So what are the key enablers to creating such a capability? Well, of course, you need to pick the right technical solution, one which does not disaggregate the problem, but considers the whole interconnected system, recognizing how both assets and crucially interventions interact with the system and each other. Beyond that, senior level sponsorship and advocacy is very important. Without that, innovative projects like this often get undermined by the arguments and barriers we have just been through, as well as arguments that they have misaligned or that they are misaligned with IT strategies, or that bias of individuals for more traditional solutions or ways of working. When getting going, it is important to demonstrate value quickly. If necessary, start small. Make sure you are focused on a key business challenge or a critical process, ensuring you fully understand the decision parameters, timeframes, and who holds the accountabilities for the decision making. Ensure you have their backing. Over time, build internal capability, not supplier dependence, by ensuring that the solutions and processes are adequately resourced and that the tool is integrated into the decision making. Don't forget to identify and track benefits over time. Publicise your wins and successes. Build a coalition and advocacy for a systemic approach. And finally, beware the smoke and mirrors. There are a lot of expensive imitations out there. Many solutions claim to be able to undertake a systemic approach. Few are architected in a way which enables them to do so, or even if they claim that they can undertake that capability. So let's just take a look at the process and the delivery of such a tool within the business. We start clearly with a business process that we want to improve or we want to reduce the risk of, and through that business process we create data which is generally captured in corporate systems. We will generally extract that data from the corporate systems, but we can build API interfaces if required. That data is pulled into a common data platform within our solution, where we use that to manage the data and rapidly configure the solution. We also use that platform to manage any assumptions and capture those assumptions so that they're visible to the user community. The model itself really comprises 3 stages: the scenario definition, the running of the scenarios, and then the scenario analysis afterwards. And we would use these 3 steps to describe that rapid scenario analysis. Scenarios are underpinned by insight and changing concepts from a horizon scanning capability, whereby the internal drivers and external context are used to change the parameters under which the scenarios are run. And then the output from that is the capability itself, where we have insight into the decision-making processes and are able to course correct at pace and reinform the strategies. Strategies should not be a document that sits on the shelf for years. It should be a living and breathing thing that is informed and reinformed by this process. As I mentioned earlier, take time to track the benefits and also use the output to reinform the changing context and any changes that you want to make in that original business process, such that you can capture any data that you identify as being critical to your decision-making processes. Okay, so we're going to conclude by just taking a quick look at National Grid as a case study. And really, this demonstrates how National Grid have embraced the technology and used it to deal with a rapidly changing context across multiple time horizons within that VUCA context, that VUCA world. Their resilience and future success is increasingly linked to a rapid and systemic scenario planning capability. Arguably, VUCA within the gas sector is more significant than in water. After all, they need to embrace and enable a new hydrogen economy, and National Grid will soon have to switch to carrying a completely different product in their network. In 2018, National Grid's scenario capability was significantly constrained by manual iterative processes, incapable of optimized outcomes, and often inconsistent in terms of output. As part of their regulatory price review, their teams of 20 analysts completed 28 future energy scenarios, a process which took them 4 person years to complete. Over a period of 6 months, phase 1 of our NetStrat project modelled the entire UK gas infrastructure and provided a scenario capability which blended hydraulic, network configuration and financial modelling. The tool enabled one analyst to repeat the same 28 scenarios in just 5 days, providing consistent, defensible, and in this instance, optimal outcomes, with each solve considering over 14 billion possible outcomes. Last year, National Grid went on to consider over 800 scenarios, and following the addition of some new functionality, they are now using the tool to inform their transition to a hydrogen network. To do this, they have now run over 8,000 scenarios this year. This astonishing success not only provides National Grid with a world-class scenario planning capability, it gives them a living strategy, and more importantly, is being used to build a resilient future, not just for the company, but for the UK. So in conclusion, When embarking on the creation of an adaptive systems planning capability, first, be clear on the business requirement. What is the business problem that you are trying to solve? Recognize and remove the barriers. Senior level sponsorship will help to do this, but a compelling business case should not be too difficult to create. Understand the business process that supports and informs the analysis. Identify how, where, and when decisions are made, and ensure the tools that you deploy are integrated into that process. Finally, if you believe in the approach and you want to grow the capability, make sure that you demonstrate and track the benefits. They may appear in the most unlikely of places. Thank you very much for listening.